The following is paid programming. Welcome to Something More with Chris Boyd, certified financial planner practitioner and founder of Asset Management Resources, LLC, a registered investment advisor firm. We call it Something More because we like to talk not only about those important dollar and cents issues, but also the quality of life issues that make the money matters matter. Here he is, your fulfillment facilitator, your partner in prosperity, advising clients across the country, your host, J. Christopher Boyd.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Something More with Chris Boyd. I'm here with Jeff Perry again this week, and our guest is Cozy Wittman. Cozy, thanks for coming back to the program.
Yeah, thank you, Chris, for having me. It's my pleasure.
So you are sort of our go-to expert when it comes to talking about college planning, college finance issues. So thanks for joining us. Tell everyone a little bit about your firm, and we'll certainly be talking about these issues as we dive in.
Yeah, for sure. So College Inside Track helps families navigate the complexities of the college search, application, and acceptance process. We've been doing that for 17 years. And our goal is always the same. We want to make sure that families find right fit schools for their students. And we would define that in three key categories: the right academic fit for the student, the right social fit for the student, and the right financial fit for the family.
Well, I thought in this segment, this episode, we'd spend some time talking about maybe those first two, and we'll have you back on another one to talk about the financial component of things. Sure. And I know Jeff is particularly tuned into these issues because his granddaughter's in the process of dealing with some of these kind of considerations. So I don't know if Jeff's probably the best one to start.
Well, all these issues are certainly on the top of my mind for our listeners. They hear me talking about our granddaughter Faith. She's a junior in Rhode Island and starting the process of thinking about where she wants to go to school, what she wants to study. And in her case, which I'm sure this comes up all the time, Cozy, she's an athlete. She's a runner, cross country and track, and she's truth be told, she wants to go to college to run. And so let's start there. How do you focus in a young lady or a young gentleman in this case in their family when you have all these things? You talked about academics. That is the reason that they go to college. That's what I'm saying a lot lately. and what what they want to study versus the social stuff, and athletics or interest or regions. How do you start to get a family focused?
Yeah, every college search should really be balanced and help the student define criteria under the three categories that I talked about. And for the purposes of this conversation, we'll just focus on academic and social fit.
Great.
So sports falls under that social fit piece. So as a student is developing their criteria, they want to make sure that they're balancing academic fit for them and social fit. And if the student's that athlete, right, they should be balancing not just, is this the place in your granddaughter's case? Is this a good place for me to run? But also, is this the right place for me to hang out if something would happen and I can't run anymore, right? I think one of the things that would surprise people when you look at national transfer rates, today the national transfer rate sits just under 38%, meaning kids go off to schools, they discover within year one or year two, this is not the right place for me to hang out. Or they decide to change their major and they didn't do a deeper dive on that academic side of the house. And so now I don't have majors to transition into at this college because I chose this college for one specific major.
Right.
And then they have to leave. And when you transition schools, it increases the cost of that degree. When we look at state school to state school transfers, the increase is about $14,000. So this is not chump change. Well, if you look at student athletes, guess what the percentage is for them?
I'm afraid to guess, but I bet it's higher.
It's exactly the same, 38%. Right?
Oh, is that right? Oh,
that's...
Which is a big number.
It's huge, right? 40%. That's almost half the kids that go off to school to make a wrong choice. And what we find in general is that students are making decisions off, great campus, cool sports teams, and I really like the dorms. Or in the student athlete's case, I can run here, I can run here, and I can run here. So
I think you've met him.
Exactly. So while it's really hard to pull the stars out of the eyes of a student athlete who is talking to coaches and the coaches are really feeding their ego, right?
Right.
I think it's really important to remind the student of two things. One, there are relatively few, in your granddaughter's case, Faith, there are relatively few professional cross-country runners.
Right.
We haven't met one yet.
So you really are, this is a means to an end, right? You're going to run to give yourself the opportunity to run one last time before you kind of go off and live your life. So you want to balance that with, does this school have the right majors for me? Are the intended outcomes of those degrees the things that I'm hoping for? So am I looking at a degree, because let's take a degree like biology. On some campuses, that degree is going to be gearing the student to go get a master's or to go to med school or to do some next schooling of some sort.
Right.
On other campuses, that degree will be gearing the student off to start a career. And there's no right or wrong there. There's just, what does the student want or what do they think they're going to do, right? These are all probabilities because students grow and learn and mature as they go to college, of course. But you also want to think about, what are all the degrees on this campus that my student might be interested in? Do they have multiple degrees that my student could see transitioning into? Does this school help them figure that out, help them figure that piece out? Because relatively few 18-year-olds know what they want to do. And so really diving a little bit deeper on that academic side of the house to determine, what are my research opportunities? What are the backgrounds of the professors and the programs? Where are their connections? So getting deeper with the schools and doing more research means that you are significantly decreasing the opportunity for students to need to transfer later. And then when we look at our student athletes, we want to also have them on the social side of the house, thinking about things like what's the coaching style of this coach? What is the culture on this team? And you might only find that out by talking to some students who are on the team.
Oh, good point.
Who else on the team has the degrees that I'm thinking about? What's the academic support for cross-country runners? Because on some campuses, tons of support for the revenue generating athletes, right? That are sitting in football and basketball.
Right, the big sports, yeah.
Exactly, hockey, volleyball, versus no support for the cross-country runners, right? So really balancing that out, I think, is a good idea.
Cozy, tell me, you kind of made reference to the idea of, schools that gear you toward a job, a career, and some that are more geared toward further academic pursuit, a graduate degree. Do you have strong views yourself on the appropriateness of a liberal arts education versus a more career-minded outcome?
Sure. So I always call them STEMmy schools, right? STEMmy approach versus liberal arts approach. Yeah. Here's what I think. I think there's some students that are super geared toward a STEM style education where you're going to get a degree and this is the degree you're getting and all your classes are going to be surrounding that degree. And then there are some students that just lend themselves better to a liberal arts education where they're teaching you to think, in essence. When you look at outcomes, however, it's super interesting. The kids who are liberal arts majors do tend to be more employable and earn more money. And so I think it's important.
A little counterintuitive, perhaps.
Yeah, it is.
But I think that's really important because, as you said earlier, a lot of people at 18 have no idea what they really, they have an idea of what they might want to pursue, but they really don't know what they'll like or not like until they engage.
That's right. And I always, one of the things, and I meet with tons and tons and tons of families, right? And you can see the pressure on the students. For a lot of students, it actually shuts down their college search. Well, I don't know what I want to do, so how could I possibly be looking at colleges? And parents feel that way too. Like, my student doesn't know what they want to do, so how can we look at schools? The thing that I want people to understand is there are schools in the country geared toward helping kids figure that out. And there are also schools that market themselves off four-year graduation rates. So there are, when you think about the student who doesn't know what they want, sometimes people lean in to the really big universities that have a lot of majors and you can change your mind. And that's the problem. There are a lot of majors and you can change your mind, right? And so the philosophy on some of those campuses is, look, you'll just wander around here until you figure that out. And if you're here 6 years, you're here 6 years, I guess, oh, well.
Yeah.
But there are other schools that are like, we want you in and out of here in 4 years. And we've got a pathway to help you figure out what that's going to look like. And one of the things that I really want to relieve people of, and students, relatively few, I already said this, relatively few 18-year-olds know what they want to do. And I think we need to stop talking about careers like it's a lifelong commitment, right? You do not need to know what you want to do at 18 for the rest of your life. But that's how we pose the question to students, right? Thanksgiving, Aunt Marge says, hey, Faith, what do you think you want to do? And there's the impression, right, that there's some kind of lifelong commitment to that. I always tell students, look, you're just really choosing a major for the first maybe 3 to 5 years of your career. And then guess what? You're going to grow. You're going to learn things. You're going to get exposed to things that you weren't exposed to before. People are going to see skills in you that you didn't even know you had, and they're going to offer you opportunities. And next thing you know, you're way over here doing college consulting instead of,
Right. Well, that's so true, though. I think everyone's career path is that oftentimes it's not as prescribed as you'd expect, and it's one thing leads to another, and you find yourself landing in a certain kind of work experience. So that's a really great point, that maybe the pressure's not as great as we might present it to be.
I think that is a good point, but to follow up, Cozy, is there are there wrong choices? Meaning, can you be so narrow and maybe pick, people use all these kind of silly examples of majors that don't make sense, like basket weaving, et cetera. But if someone picks something that's really doesn't have any vocational or employment opportunities, can there be wrong decisions in choosing a major just out of interest and kind of, something I think they would like to?
Should you really pursue your passion?
Yeah. Should you pursue your passion if there's not a visible or likely vocational or professional outcome?
Yeah, I think you have to be careful always about balancing the cost of that degree with your ability to pay for that degree. So, and that doesn't necessarily relate directly to the cost of the education if the family can afford to pay for that. So I think there's a balanced approach there. Would I want to see someone take on $200,000 of debt to be an English Lit major with no understanding whatsoever of what they might choose to do with that degree at a later point? No, I would not like to see that. But guess what? I would not like to see someone take on $200,000 of debt for a teaching degree either. And there's a very clear, direct, here's what your next step is. So I think there has to be a balance where, if you can pay for your degree, then get the degree you want. But I do think that people need to think about, like, what is the intended outcome for the degree path that I'm choosing? One of my kids ended up at a college where they made it super easy to double and triple major. So it allowed her to go get the practical degree at the same time that she was pursuing her passion around history. And she ended up graduating with a communications PR degree and a history degree. And her deep goal although it's changed now that she's a grown-up and working in the space. Her deep goal was to go back and be a history professor. And I think at the end of the day, she would still love to do that, but she's not pursuing it anymore. So there are ways to go at that don't require the choice, if you will. And so looking at schools that allow you to double and triple major relatively easily allows you to pursue your passion area, as well as kind of pursue some areas that might have a more concrete outcome, if you will.
Let's turn back to the topic, of finding fit. And you kind of highlighted some things that may be distractions that aren't necessarily the thing to focus on. I mean, you can't go into a college tour and not see the latest new building, whatever the fabulous athletic center is, or I don't know.
The free workout center.
That's right. And all about the meal plan, and look, we have the blue light system or something. I mean, it seems like everywhere. Right. So what should students, when they go visit a college, or as they think about which colleges to visit, what are the kind of things that they should be trying to zero in on to help them find fit?
Yeah, so I love for students to start on the social fit side of the house. It feels much less intimidating. It also never shuts the search down, right? When you start with, okay, let's talk about what you want to do. And so we can go look at schools that have those degrees. Often the students will shut that down, right? And I'm not going to go look at schools. I don't have any interest in touring any schools, right? And now you're going nowhere fast. So I love for families to start on the social fit side of the house, because it's so much easier for the student to figure out the right vibe, if you will. Yeah. So social fit includes the size of the school. So going to see a couple different sizes, having conversations around, at the big school, you have to be your own good self-advocate. No one's going to hold your hand there. If you have financial aid issues, you're going to have to go bash down the door of the financial aid office and be diligent in going back to them until you get your issue resolved. Where at the smaller school, mid-sized smaller school, you'll get a lot more hand-holding. They'll remember who you are. You'll actually even talk to the same person a couple of times, right? So having some pro-con decisions around, what it is about the different schools that you enjoy. I meet a lot of kids who want to go to the big school who are, super introverts. That can be a really uncomfortable experience if you can't find your people on campus because there are 40,000 people there. So having some of those conversations, size, how far from home is the student comfortable? And if we're going to talk flyable to home, what do mom and dad think about how many times they can fly you off, right? Yeah,
set those expectations, right?
Exactly. One of my kids looked at Ithaca. I live in Minneapolis. And she was like, so every time I come home, I've got to do the long car ride plus pick up I was like, time out. What do you mean every time you come home? Are you going to come home at Christmas and the end of the year? So starting to have some of those conversations around, am I able to easily get home? And is that something I want? Or am I really comfortable being super far from home? And if you're going to be super far from home, create a break glass plan. So in emergency, here's our break glass plane ticket for either the parents to go see the student or the student to come home, because everybody gets homesick. It's not a coincidence that parent weekend is the end of September, right? That's when college stops feeling like summer camp, if you will. So start with social fit, size of town it's in, how many things around there are there to do, how often or how long does the campus expect that you will stay on campus? Do they want you there all 4 years in a dorm, or does everybody move off campus in year 2? So starting to get a sense of the permanency. For instance, a lot of students will make decisions around dorm rooms, and they're looking at schools where everybody moves off campus in year 2. So why are you making a decision based off 1 year of your experience there, right? So start with social fit. It's so much easier to define. And just go see a few schools that are really close to you. Even if the student wants to go further away from home, you start with those easy ones that are close because it helps them define fit. And we can all agree, student, that you're going to go further away, but let's just start here. And then you take that information and start to extrapolate to the parts of the country the student might be interested in.
So when it comes to those, are they looking at in those little visits like you're talking about nearby? Are they looking at scale, mostly the big school, small school kind of components, or are there other things that are important in that finding that fit?
Yeah, so as you get on some campuses, if you're doing an official tour, and I think it's okay. So if you have an early sophomore, if right now your student is a sophomore in high school, it's okay to go do just walk-arounds on some campuses without officially touring, right?
Mm-hmm.
As you get closer to the end of sophomore year, beginning of junior year, I like for people to take the actual tours because I want them to hear what the students talk about as distinguishing factors of their campus. Like, here's what sets us apart from other schools. Here's what is important to us about our college. But I also don't want that family to be the silent family walking behind that backward walking, talking tour guide, right?
Right.
Most people are super quiet. They just listen. I want people to ask things like, tell me about connectivity in the dorms, right? Do I have to have an Ethernet cable? Or because most of these schools, right, they're ancient. They've been around for hundreds of years in some cases, especially on the East Coast. And their buildings are brick and the internet is not great. And do I need to, do something special? Otherwise, you're going to get the same tour over and over again, right? We do or don't have air conditioning.
Talk about weekends and that kind of thing, or?
Yes, exactly. What percentage of kids stay on campus over the weekend, right? Is this a commuter school? Do most kids just come for the day and leave? You can tell that too by the number of freshman dorms they have.
Mm-hmm.
But I also love them. Ask the tour guide stuff about them. Why did you choose this school? You get all kinds of answers. Yeah. What do you love about going to school here? What don't you love about going to school here? What do you wish you would have known before you showed up on this campus? So asking some good questions. If your student needs something in particular, so one of my kids needs meds every single month. So one of the things we talked about and then we drove around to see was, where is the closest pharmacy? Right. I expected that there would be one on campus. There was not. And in fact, there wasn't even one close. So it changed our perspective on, if she goes to this school, she actually would kind of need a car to go get her meds. So, and we didn't do that for any of our other kids. So starting to think about, what does my student need to be successful on a campus from a social perspective, and then go seek those out and ask those good questions. And if you're looking at mid-size and smaller schools, you can often sit down with the admissions group and have a good conversation right after your tour and ask some of those good questions.
Cozy, how big should the pool of schools that the family, the student is looking at? I know it starts out with thousands, but when you start to get into that junior year, as you said, how many schools should be a target for most families?
Yeah, so a great college list today is about 6 to 10 schools. Mm-hmm. It's not unusual when we work with families for that college list to kind of ebb up into maybe 15 and even 20 schools, not to apply to, but that they're researching, right? Because schools are constantly popping on the list, coming off the list, right? Yep. But ultimately, when it's time to apply, you want that list whittled down to the strongest 6 to 10. If you have more than 10 schools, you have not done your diligence in researching those schools. And so kids think, Common App, I'm going to apply to 50 schools. It's super easy to do. Okay, great. Then you get answers from 35 of them. And now, right, those answers came in between January and March of senior year.
Yep.
You've got to give them an answer by May.
Right.
There's no way you can do great diligence then. So do it on the front side. That's why we start working with families in sophomore and junior years, so we can do all of that research on the front side. So by the time we get to 6 to 10, the students can tell us, this school is on the list because of this, 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 and this, right? And that's really where you should get yourself.
Well, thank you, Cozy. And for our listeners, join us for another episode when we'll have Cozy Wittman back, and we'll be talking more about the financial side of things. So join us then.
Thank you for listening to Something More with Chris Boyd. Call us for help, whether it's financial planning, portfolio management, insurance concerns, or those quality of life issues that make the money matters matter. Whatever's on your mind, visit us at amrfinancial.com or call us toll free at 866-771-8901 or send us your questions to radio@amrfinancial.com.
You're listening to Something More with Chris Boyd, Financial Talk Show.
Asset Management Resources LLC and J. Christopher Boyd, CFP, provide investment advice on an individual basis to clients only. Proper advice depends on a complete analysis of all facts and circumstances. The information given on this program is in the nature of general financial comments and cannot be relied upon as pertaining to your specific situation. AMR LLC cannot guarantee that using the information from this show will generate profits or ensure freedom from loss. Listeners should consult their own financial advisors or conduct their own due diligence before making any financial decisions.